Milwaukee Bucks fans, welcome back to Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. I'm your host, Dean Simon. Please consider liking, subscribing, turning on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. So, the first story today is from Mark Stein of the Stein Line saying that the Milwaukee Bucks and Miami Heat look to be the top contenders or probable suitors for Bradley Beal of the Phoenix Suns, as it seems as though talks have become a little bit more realistic on both sides concerning the Suns and Beal with regard to a contract buyout, trying to get him off the final years of that gargantuan $251 million contract, the worst in the NBA, trying to get him off those last two, I believe, years where he's making $54 and $57 million annually, which is just ridiculous. But my thing with these two teams being named as the top contenders to land Bradley Beal if a buyout were to occur is it just shows the desperation of these two franchises specifically. With the Miami Heat, Pat Riley is the epitome of not desperation necessarily, but of aggressiveness, of uber aggressiveness, even if it means he strikes out on every superstar player or star caliber player that he's trying to acquire in free agency or by trade in recent years, other than Jimmy Butler. Pat Riley is just always going to be aggressive. It's just his nature. He's always trying to keep the Miami Heat in position to contend for a title, make a deep postseason run. The last thing that he wants is for the Heat to enter any kind of retooling or rebuilding era. It's just not his way, not how he functions, not as it was as a player, a coach, an executive, as he was able to get LeBron and Chris Bosh to join the Heat in the summer of 2010. He was an instrumental piece of that, dropping the rings on the table and basically convincing LeBron to join Miami. But the Bucks are in that same area of desperation where, of course, they're trying to keep Giannis happy. They're trying to appease him, build a real championship contender in what should be a wide-open Eastern Conference. And for 25-26 purposes, or even the next year after that, maybe multiple years, if the Bucks were able to pick up Bradley Beal after a potential contract buyout with the Suns, I don't think that this is a bad idea or a negative idea, because Bradley Beal is not a negative player nowadays. The only negative connotation with him is that he has the worst contract in the NBA. But on court, it's not like his production has fallen off a cliff to the point where he's not able to contribute to a good team, at least in my eyes. Bradley Beal can still get you, as we saw last year, about 17, 18 points a night on pretty great efficiency. His scoring chops are still there. He hasn't really lost that much of a step in the athleticism department. He's just all around still there as a serviceable scorer that maybe he's not the second or third best guy on a championship caliber team, but he can still offer scoring whenever you need it. And I really don't think it would be a bad idea for the Bucks to come in and scoop up Bradley Beal, take on those shooting guard scoring responsibilities, one-on-one shot creation responsibilities, because he's proven, though he played for a lowly Suns team these past couple of years, that he's still got it. He's still talented. The only bad thing that you can associate with him really is his contract. So once that's out of the way, he's an efficient 17-point scorer. Maybe his defense isn't the greatest in the world, but if you need offense, Bradley Beal is someone you could definitely call. So I wouldn't think it's a bad idea at all. And maybe this is just me because I've always loved Bradley Beal, but personally, it wouldn't look like a bad option to me if Bradley Beal's contract, anything to do with money with him over the past couple of years, just thrown out the window. He gets a clean slate. He could do some things for the Milwaukee Bucks, but in the case where Bradley Beal does not join the Milwaukee Bucks, I think Gary Trent Jr. coming back on that 2-year deal, he could see an expanded role going into next year, again, if they're unable to land Bradley Beal, because Gary Trent Jr. has been a high-volume scorer before, maybe hasn't had the best field goal percentage or advanced stat, kind of like effective field goal percentage, whatever, to show for it, but he's proven to remain a stellar three-point shooter no matter how many he takes. As a Portland Trailblazer, as a Raptor, he got up to as many as 7.4 threes attempted in a season, 7 threes attempted in a season, and his percentage hasn't really dropped below 38.5%. He's always remained a stellar three-point shooter no matter how many he takes. And this past year, what really has me in this mindset where, he can do a lot of things for the Bucks just as Giannis's potential number 2 guy in the starting lineup. He showed me a lot in terms of his isolation scoring, his ball handling, just one-on-one shot creation, isolation scoring prowess in general, and mostly in the playoffs. Did you know that in the playoffs, in that 5-game first-round series against the Indiana Pacers, he shot 62.5% on shots from 16 feet to the three-point line, like inside the three-point line in the playoffs. Mostly shots off the dribble, between the legs, step back. Maybe he's driving to the paint, sharp step back on the left elbow, hits a jumper. Gary Trent Jr. is an effective ball handler and off the dribble scorer, and he showed plenty of it in the playoffs. Of course, with it, he knocked down 50% of his threes. He was the main reason the Bucks were, able to somewhat stay alive in games 3 and game 5, because he just would not go down without a fight. Gary Trent Jr. coming back on, which, I thought it was a steal, bringing him back on a 2-year, about $7.5 million deal. If a guy like Beal doesn't come in and shore up those shooting guard minutes, Gary Trent Jr. can go back to shooting as much as he did as a member of the Toronto Raptors, and he could get to a place where he averages 18 points a game again with relative ease, because that 3-point shooting is always going to be there no matter the volume. Maybe he's in the past he hasn't really done much from 2-point range, but there's potential for that to change based on how he closed out the regular season this past year and throughout the playoffs, or their short stint in the 2025 NBA playoffs. So Gary Trent Jr. being looked at as a one-on-one scorer, an on-ball scorer, he could definitely take a leap as a scorer. Maybe even, I don't think it's insane to think that he can get up to 17 to 20 points a game with pretty decent efficiency, maybe 43.5% from the field, 39% from 3, because he's proved he can do it before, and for a Bucks team that may not be as competitive as they want to be, I think it's possible that he can do it again. But another guy that could see an expanded role is Jericho Sims, after the Bucks re-signed him to a 2-year deal as well. He's another player that could get a little bit more opportunity, and especially with Myles Turner coming in, I feel like Sims' archetype as a player, he's the perfect guy to come in and be Turner's backup. He's just a big, strong, athletic, agile bowling ball of a center that can jump out of the gym. And the great thing about him is that when he comes into the game, he doesn't necessarily afford the opposing team any relief, thinking, oh, now Myles Turner, their main shot blocker's out, we're going to be able to get to the rim with ease. That's not true, because Jericho Sims is going to fly in out of nowhere and contest shots. If anything, if he's not getting a hand on it, he's going to deter a lot of shots at the rim, and he's going to be a force in transition. He showed in limited opportunities that he could be somewhat of a ball handler in transition, which I thought was pretty entertaining, number one, but also really impressed me. He could protect the rim as well as anybody else, and I think he has a lot of potential to come in and just be this great change of pace and change of style in comparison to Myles Turner. While both of them are shot blockers, on the offensive end, you have one guy who is going to be spacing out to the 3-point line pretty consistently and who could also score inside, and then Jericho Sims, who's just going to run right through you or jump over the top of you. So I think it's a pretty good mix of two different archetypes of centers that can kind of complement each other pretty well. Not necessarily like playing with each other, but in their like on-off substitutions, I feel like it could kind of mess with other teams' game plans a little bit and muck some game plan strategies up for opposing teams that are going head to head with the Milwaukee Bucks on any given night. But finally, our last bit of an update, our last bit of news for the day, is that former Bucks big man John Henson, he recently made an appearance on SiriusXM NBA radio, and he alleged that there was a potential Chris Middleton for Jimmy Butler swap that was discussed between the Bucks and the Timberwolves. And to this point, Henson showed that Giannis went to the Milwaukee Bucks front office and he said, no, we're not doing that. And according to Henson, it was about the only time that he had ever seen Giannis stand up and go to directly to the front office and say something with regard to denying a transaction or any kind of move proposed by the front office. And it's just super surprising in general to hear this because, of course, we remember how great of a scorer Chris Middleton was, but this was, according to Henson again, around 2018. So this places Jimmy Butler on the Minnesota Timberwolves when it was the height of his locker room spats with Andrew Wiggins, with Karl Anthony Towns getting on them because they didn't work hard enough, according to Jimmy Butler. And dealing for a guy like Jimmy Butler, where he's super vocal, he's going to let you know what he thinks of the talent on the roster, how they're performing, and he's going to be very vocal about wanting out if things go wrong. Trading for a guy that's potentially volatile like Jimmy Butler would have been an interesting thing, if Jimmy were to pair with a guy like Giannis who's more laid back and relaxed with these kinds of things, though he'll kind of poke things around in the media, kind of hint that he's feeling a certain way. Jimmy Butler's just way more outward with how he expresses himself. But in terms of off-court things, that's one thing. But on-court, Jimmy Butler, the potential, man, it's kind of weird to think what would have happened in the future if Jimmy Butler were in Chris Middleton's shoes. Because, of course, you could argue that Jimmy Butler was the better player back then, and, obviously all around. Of course, Jimmy Butler is the miles better defender. He's one of the best defensive wings in recent memory. But Chris Middleton's specific role on the Bucks, which, if that trade was done in 2018, 3 years later, the Bucks would have won the championship. I feel as though Chris Middleton's role was absolutely necessary for the Bucks, and that Jimmy Butler would not have been able to, as weird as it sounds, fill Chris Middleton's shoes in those specific instances, because Chris Middleton was their go-to guy in the clutch. When they needed a bucket to win the game, to seal the game, they would go to Chris Middleton. And while Jimmy Butler has proven from 2020 onward that he's one of the best playoff performers in NBA history, Chris Middleton was that guy that, due to his scoring versatility, his jump shooting, which Jimmy Butler did not have, that he was the guy they would go to put in a dagger. And I don't know if these roles were switched around, that Jimmy Butler could get to a point where he can knock down those shots when placed in the same positions as Chris Middleton. Of course, Chris Middleton's just the all-around more versatile scorer, and again, that was just a necessary role that Chris Middleton had to fill out, that Jimmy Butler, I feel as though, would not have been able to. But anyways, that is all a hypothetical, all speculation, but we see now that it was probably the right decision by Giannis Antetokounmpo to go to the front office, say no, get that trade proposal out of John Horse's, because it ended up, resulting in a championship, and you can't really ask for anything more than that. But anyways, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. I've been Dean Simon. Make sure to like, tell me what you think in the comments, subscribe, turn on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. Thank you very much for watching, and go Bucks.